Thanks, James. I think we are about to get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today for the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub data briefing for interested data professionals in the Baltimore region. We are so excited to have you all join us today. We have a great presentation ready for you all. We're excited to be in conversation. Please feel free to use the chat to add questions. We want to also make note that we are recording this session for anyone that was not able to attend that would be interested. And, you know, as if there are things that you wanted to hear, but we did not cover, we do have time for question and answer. And at the end, we want to gather some kind of conversation and feedback from you as well. So I will get started so we can do some introductions. Today, I want to first introduce myself. I know many of you all on the call, but I want to officially introduce myself. I want to thank you all again for joining us. My name is Bridget Blount, and I am the Deputy Chief Executive Officer with Baltimore's Promise, and I provide the strategy and oversight of the work developing the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. I've been with the organization now leading this effort for 6 years. When I first came into this work, it was just a thought. And I am very proud of the progress that we've made over the past 6 years and excited to share that with you all today. I'll turn it over to my other co-presenter, James, for introductions.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm James Sadler. I'm the Director of Research at Baltimore's Promise, and my role with the Data Hub is to help with the committee structure of the Data Hub, and I'll also eventually be leading analyses of projects. And I'll turn it over to Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Peak, and I lead the Data Equity Consulting team. We are facilitators who are expert in racial equity and justice, who also happen to be data people, evaluators, researchers, policy analysts, and we are helping with thought partnership, helping to shape a collaborative practice and modeling data equity and particularly engaging community. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Okay, so to get us started, we wanted to ask you all to participate in a quick getting to know you activity. So we wanted to, ask you to share your name, organization, role, and then we have a juicy icebreaker because we're really interested in creating community here. This is our first data briefing that we are hosting in this kind of container, but we hope to offer these types of opportunities for people who are interested in the work to be able to drop in periodically over the process of the development of the Baltimore City, development implementation of the Data Hub. So the question is, if you were suddenly asked to give a 30-minute presentation on any topic that you are passionate about, what would it be? Now, give a quick thought to that. And then please share in a chat. And if anybody would want to come off on mute too, we'd be happy to hear your voice. Oh, thanks, Marissa. Cultural sustainability. So we know who to go to. Hi, Karen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Bridget. Excited to be here.
Oh, interesting. I like the simple ways you can care about the unhoused in our community. Hey, Ajwa. Super interesting. Dana using Legos for strategy development. Very interesting. Huh. Amanda, y'all see, this is a great icebreaker. We learned so much about each other already. Um, this is like a fun fact. Like, what is this, James? You can
There's a
give.
game called GeoGuessr where the game is you're dropped using Google Street View anywhere in the world, and you got to guess where you are just based on what you see around you. Very cool, very nerdy, highly recommend it. And yeah, so I've learned weird things like I know what the font on Polish highway signs looks like to know if I'm in Poland and so on and so forth.
Okay.
To clarify mine, we would start with Jamiroquai's Virtual Insanity and then move through the history of 90s music videos that use cubes as landscape. They're phenomenal.
Okay. I love it. Okay. You just learned so much. Look at us. We're multifaceted data professionals here. And so I appreciate you all being here. Okay. And so we're going to jump right into what we hope is an engaging and interactive conversation. Thanks so much for being willing to share just a little bit about your all selves in the chat. We have a young person here with us today who is phenomenal and incredible. She has led and started, she led several of our community engagement sessions, and she just shared some just really powerful words about the use of data, inclusion of community, and ways that we should be thinking about our work as we move forward. So I would like to invite our youth poet, Kima Flight, to share a few pieces with us today. Thank you. I want to, James, can you help me spotlight her, please? Thank you.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Kima Flight. I am an administrative assistant for Baltimore. I am also a spoken word artist. You'll see me around the city. The first thing that I wanted to do before I get into any of my pieces is I wanted to open up the space with acknowledgements. Me and Miss Jerry worked on these acknowledgements together. And I feel like it's a beautiful way to open up the space and remember what comes with this data gathering. So we want to acknowledge the people who came before us, our Africana and Indigenous ancestors from the 4 directions around the globe, our heroes, activists, and guides, our creatives, our scholars, listeners, learners, and dreamers. We acknowledge those who endured the Mafa, the Trail of Tears, colonialism, and exploitation, the people of this land who endured invasion, displacement, and the terraforming of the land. We give thanks to all the people who carried themselves forward so that we could be here today, and the knowledge that they carry forward about caring for the lands, plants, creatures, and people. Further, we recognize the harms that have been brought in the name of advancement, including harms related to research, data gathering, experimentation, and control. Those whose ways of doing and being were deemed unfit and illegal to strip resources or claim lack of economic contribution, whose bodies were used without consent, from the Tuskegee experiments to Henrietta Lacks, from those deemed different enough to be exploited, like the neurodivergent and gay communities, and all the data gathered about us that was not centered by us, the data that describes us but not from our own reality, data that defines us as less than. We acknowledge our power to gather and to determine how data about us are used and see that it leads to our collective benefit. We also want to acknowledge that we have capacity within ourselves, trained expertise, conscious curiosity, street smarts, activism, and our collective community wisdom. We want to know that we are fit to determine how we move forward and claim our story. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And then I have one piece for you all. So I'll get off the floor after that. Someone has looked at us and decided we are already not worthy. But I'm not going to let that stop me from enjoying what my culture has created. Sometimes we seek refuge in environments that use us as a control group, that doing what they ask will somehow save us from racism. But I'm learning that it's okay to be a variable among other statistics. This isn't a diss to those who follow the path, but to the racists who try to dot plot my diction, who tell Black girls to avoid being a stereotype. Like this accent should be assigned to a lack of intelligence. Your probability of not understanding me is not on me. An institution will not invalidate my tongue, won't make you respect me more. Because before you see a scholar, you see my skin. So what does an associate degree do for me when you wouldn't associate with me anyway? Won't hire Black women for your company, but will complain when we create our own, then try to steal it. The stereotypes they tell us to avoid, just so they can use it as a prototype. Aligning with this is a regression, is a way to set Black women back for all the hard work they do for the industries that won't even hire us. We are not just samples out to be tested and tasted for the world's convenience. Intersectionality is a world where all Black women are valued, even the stereotypes, not because they're complementary to your diversity quota, but because they exist in different sets that can't be defined. Don't you know, one of the most basic rules in math is that correlation is not causation. You could assume that my big hoops plus bigger mouth adds up to trouble, but the truth is I'm human. But I see your dot plots don't give you the equation for empathy. And I understand what it's like to say you don't want to be a stereotype. This country will make you hate yourself for enjoying your culture, will make you think people attacking you is your own fault. America will measure you based off of how much they benefit. There was a time when a Black life was only counted at 3/5. See how the odds have always been stacked against us. Now it's us against the odds, against the antagonists who think that our worth is reflected in a graph and not in our characters. I don't have to have a degree because you can't get an angle on me. Racists will try to bait you into reaction or try to be let off the hook for ignorance. They say the average Black woman is mean. I say the average Black woman has always been in range, has always been a target. Misogyny and racism make it common to be in survival mode. So either meet us at the median or stay out of our business, because the average Black woman is also an independent variable. I don't need to be linear to love myself. Demanding respect for others. Oh, excuse me. I don't demand respect from others. Don't you know the power in numbers? This poem is for the deviations, for the Black girls who decided to be themselves regardless of the random errors they encounter. Our data does not determine the value of our lives. So if I am a statistic, I am 100% me while being it. Thank you.
Give it up for the poet.
So good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just appreciate every time I get the opportunity to hear such, vibrancy, such just strong words about the ways in which data really has or can be used in order to exclude certain people from conversations. And so just thank you so much, Kima, again, for being here, being willing to share your advocacy and your interest in this work. Thank you. Thank you. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Thank you. Man, it just gives me just all the feelings. Every time I hear it, I'm just like, man, that is good. Okay. We're going to jump right in to the conversation. Sorry, what's this? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we're here today to talk about the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. I hope that you first really start to think about the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub in the vibe that we've started this conversation, in the vein that we've started this conversation. The focus of our work is creating a data ecosystem where we are sharing in space collaboratively together with community data providers in order to ultimately improve outcomes for young people. We're trying to transform, in a way, traditional practices that do not include youth, community members, family members into the process, into the data process. And we're trying to ensure that we have collectively the internal infrastructure citywide in order to link data to be able to answer the questions that one program can't answer by itself. As I'll talk about in a minute, we've been working on this project for almost 10 years now. And we're finally at a place where we feel really solid in the direction that we're moving forward in. The key include Baltimore City Public Schools. They've been key champions, thought partners, and implementers of this work since the beginning. Similarly, Baltimore City, the mayor, Mayor Brandon Scott, led testimony on the behalf of the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub legislation in 2022 and has been a strong advocate for this work since then. And in Baltimore's Promise, we are the manager of the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. And we have been leading in these conversations And we are really, we were selected as the manager in 2022, but we've really been the facilitator of this process throughout this time. Before we start talking about the intricacies of the data system, we wanted to situate situate ourselves into the result, the vision that we're hoping to achieve. This quote was one of the quotes comes from Mayor Brandon Scott when he was testifying on behalf of the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub before the state legislature. The Baltimore City Youth Data Hub is a tool. It is not the answer. No data system is the answer, but it is a tool to help us improve outcomes for young people, to help us understand what we've had troubles for years in understanding comprehensively. How well are we serving our young people? What are our needs of young people? And how can we co-collaborate together? Our goal is to upend generations of inequity and help us to make better decisions by using our collective data resources. We want to make stronger families in Baltimore. We want to support the youth as they transition into adulthood. We understand that this is a cyclical work. While our focus mostly is on older young people, 14 to 24, we know those young people become adults. They become parents. And therefore, the work that we're doing will inform future generations and the circumstances of their lives. When we think about the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub, we think like, why did we started as just a conversation on why do we need it? We have a lot of great data resources already here in Baltimore. I think we're a data-rich city. We have many, all of you all on this call, for the most part, offer wonderful data resources to our community. And so the question is, what is the niche that Baltimore City Youth Data Hub is filling? What we do understand is that information about young people, it was decentralized. You could go to various places to find different sources of information, but there was not one central repository where that information was collected. There was shared agreement around definitions, calculations, and then what we were all collecting to understand the health and well-being of that age group. Getting access to data is really challenging. It's a who you know process. I'm preaching to the choir here, but to get data from Baltimore City Public Schools or different agencies or entities like that, you need to have an MOU agreement. You need to know how to follow the MOU agreement. It takes a very long time. So the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub creates an infrastructure where you can get access to data routinely, or we'll create an infrastructure where you can get access to data routinely without going through those hoops and hurdles. We've also created system changes so that when you are engaging directly with the different entities, they now have the ability to refer to an example of being able to provide support to a community organization attempting to access information. We have some foundational principles that undergird the work that we're doing. And we're hoping, if you center yourself in the middle, that the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub is a data ecosystem that brings in different collaborators together in spaces and in ways that we are currently not in the city, in order to improve system outcomes where we're focused on education, workforce, health, social services, and nonprofit work. And from this, we will be able to have families who can gain access to information and advocate for community policy changes. We'll be able to have nonprofits and community members have access to information to inform their different products, such as the community schools needs assessment. City leaders will be able to rely on information that is offered regularly. So we plan to release the same report with updated information annually or at different time points, but at the same time each interval. And then researchers will be able to request high quality de-identified data that has been de-identified but linked across multiple sectors. I want to just from the, spoiler alert here, we are in the very beginning of building the infrastructure for the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. So this last part about actually external requests coming in to the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub is a few years away, but it is our goal that we are creating products that everyone will be able to use for their different processes. I want to give a quick overview, quick language to how did we get here? This really started off as conversations. Baltimore's Promise started off having these conversations with community members around what do we need in the city. Now 12 years ago, where we just reached our 12th year as an organization. And it started, we started focusing on kindergarten readiness, like what are those key community-wide indicators of success for young people from birth to career? And under all of the conversations, it was, we don't know how well young people are doing from the data. There is not a way to really understand the trajectory of young people in our city so that we can act on the information. It was a call. People didn't have the language, but it was a call for an integrated data system that integrated information for young people. And so we started the process of engaging with the organization called Actionable Intelligence for Social Policy. We convened probably most of the organizations on this call in collaboration, whether that it was some different iteration of stakeholders at that time sitting in the seats. But we convened a integrated data system roundtable in collaboration with the Annie Casey Foundation, Actionable Intelligence for Social Policy. And from there, we just asked people, well, what could this look like for Baltimore? And it was resounding that this was something in the infrastructure that was needed. And so we entered into the AISP, Actionable Intelligence for Social Policy, a center out of the University of Pennsylvania that provides technical assistance for communities interested in building IDSs. We've spent the next 3 years really focused on what does it mean to design an integrated data system from a technical aspect, the community aspect, thinking about shifting towards more of a community governance model, as well as thinking about the MOU's data sharing process. We hit a hiccup. We thought that most of these projects you can do with MOUs, data sharing agreements. However, due to the challenge in the Maryland Public Information Act, so the MPIA, we had to pivot, and that took us a little bit I wouldn't say off track, because our goal and our vision is laser focused. We want to be able to build this tool to produce actionable information. But as you all know, the journey has different roads that it may take you down as you go towards your end destination. And so it was determined that we needed to actually work towards state legislation in order to authorize data sharing between those 3 key agencies. We will talk more about that, like explicitly what that legislation did when I turn it over to my colleague, James. But we are excited because as of April of 2022, legislation was approved and the law went into effect on June 2022 that authorized data sharing between Baltimore City Public Schools, Baltimore City government on behalf of its agencies, and Baltimore's Promise on representing the nonprofits connected to our organization, as well as the organizations that we directly support. So what is the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub? The Baltimore City Youth Data Hub, the purpose of the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub is to ensure, and this language comes directly from the legislation, our goal is to promote the health and safety and security of young people in Baltimore. We are relentless. Our goal at Baltimore's Promise, and as an extension is the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub, is to be an engine that produces actionable insight so that people in our community here in Baltimore will understand how well young people are faring. We want to produce information that has been co-developed, co-designed, and then often offer post development of solutions that meet community needs. Our goal is to really get to a place where we're evaluating the programs and services that are being offered by Baltimore City that are being offered by programs and institutions in Baltimore City. We care about the well-being of young people. We want to understand where are they on their path towards economic mobility. If that's the case, what are the structures that we need to put in place? We have a lot of great information here in Baltimore, but what does it look like for us to collaborate in a way that is different, transformative? These are our key values. So just guiding the implementation and operation of the hub. That really, and that is how, if we think about these values, this is something that we came up with collaboratively. We had a data working group in 2019 where we convened a lot of different stakeholders, community advocates. We convened funders as well as data providers to talk about, well, what does it look like for us to eliminate bias in the development of integrated data systems and just in the data process overall. And these were the values that we came up with. These focus on, one, not focusing on the individual. Our work is systems work. We are focusing on improving system level challenges and barriers that prevent the population of young people and families from thriving. We're working to eliminate racial disparities and inequities. And so that means that we're also focusing on process, like what in our process produces and exacerbate, one, our interpretations, as well as then as far as disparate outcomes for young people. And then we're working to ensure, we're excited because we just were able to hire, I think Alejandro has joined us, if not, he's working too. But we were able to hire this year our first director of data infrastructure and integration. So we're working to ensure that we have the staff we're working that we have the staff and infrastructure to ensure that we're using data both ethically as well as ensuring security and privacy of that information. But in the quote that I did not get to share that Mayor Scott shared for the testimony, he mentioned that data is a tool, one that should definitely be protected, but that should not be shielded from use, because we should be leveraging it for us to ensure we're working efficiently and effectively on behalf of young people. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, James, to get more into the legislation.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, again. So Bridget talked about the purpose and vision of the Data Hub. We talked about our guiding principles. So I'll talk a little bit about what else is in the legislation. And for folks that really want to get into the legalese of it, I'm dropping a link to the raw legislation in the chat. But first is the definition of the data providers, which includes Baltimore City, city schools, and Baltimore's Promise. And of course, that means that the city of Baltimore includes all the different agencies that are involved in the city, such as the Health Department, the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Rec and Parks, the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement, Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, et cetera. Anything that's housed in the city can share data with the Data Hub. In terms of the definition for youth, according to the legislation, youth is defined as any person under the age of 21 who either, one, resides in Baltimore City, two, attends or graduated from an elementary or secondary school in Baltimore City, or three, participates in or graduated from any youth program in Baltimore City. So a pretty broad definition of youth that is laser focused in the Baltimore City context. Next slide, Bridget. In terms of the governance structure, the legislation calls for a couple things. It first calls for an executive committee that's made up of the mayor of Baltimore or their designee, and the CEO of city schools or their designee, and any additional members that's appointed by the mayor. It also calls for an advisory committee of community stakeholders, which we'll talk more about how we are enforcing that soon. It also requires an appointed non-governmental manager responsible for the operation, upkeep, and security of the Data Hub. And as Bridget mentioned, Baltimore's Promise was appointed as the manager in 2022. It also requires an in-depth review of all queries by the manager with the assistance from technical experts. So with this guidance from the legislation, we have developed our governance structure, which is on the next slide. Our community government model, which I'll first give a shout out to Jadzia Floyd from the 2GEMS team for making this really handy graphic for us. It starts in the middle where we are the manager, Baltimore's Promise, responsible for the oversight of the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. And then we have three major prongs of the government structure. As I said, we have our executive committee that has the mayor and Mayor Scott and CEO Dr. Santelises right now. Then our technical experts is our data oversight committee, which is made up of representatives from data providing institutions that are both close to the data and close to the programming. So all the institutions that I mentioned before are part of that data oversight committee. Both the executive committee and the data oversight committee have been running now. The executive committee for over a year, and the data oversight committee, which I'll talk a little bit about more soon, has been meeting every single month since December. And as Bridget mentioned, we actually have an executive committee meeting coming up next Wednesday, or this Wednesday, from 9 to 10 p.m. More information is on our Data Hub website on Baltimore's Promise. And it is, excuse me, I just realized that we had an earthquake here, so I'm a little distracted. I don't know if anybody else felt that. We have very distracted here. Apologies. The executive committee is, yes, it's open to the public. Thank you, Frankie. Okay, I'm glad. The executive committee meeting is open to the public, so the information on how to access it is available online. The one community structure that we've been really intentional about building, which we're really excited to talk more about soon, is the Community Research and Action Committee, which will be made up of community members from Baltimore City. That will serve to increase awareness and provide feedback on the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. A lot of great things happening there that, again, we'll get into more details soon. Yeah, Jerry, we are shaking up the data dynamics. The world ain't ready for us. So in terms of the data flow process, it is cyclical, of course, and it may or may not start with question gathering from the different institutions that provide data. So our internal city agencies, city schools, and nonprofit agencies. You'll see there that there are future collaborators there because we are strategizing and working on expanding the data hub more than what the current legislation provides. For example, more nonprofit institutions and state agencies like the Department of Juvenile Services. So we're working on that. But the question gathering comes from these committees and from our community, which then leads to data integration and analysis and interpretation. The analysis and integration only occurs internally with the manager at Baltimore's Promise, but within our committee structure, we're going to be sharing our results back and forth to get feedback to go in and out of the data to determine what are the additional questions that are unanswered that data can help us throughout any sort of project. And again, these are questions that can't be answered with any one program data system, that it needs the integration of individual level data. Once we are towards the final stages of a project, then there comes dissemination, where the different committees are going to collaborate on the different methods for data dissemination in various formats. And we're really interested in making sure that our reports and our findings are accessible to a wide variety of stakeholders, not just city institution stakeholders, not just our funders and our community-based organizations, but also any community resident should be able to access our data in a way that is actionable for them. And what that might look like can be different from project to project, but we know that it's likely going to include things like reports or interactive maps, interactive dashboards, so on and so forth. But we're really excited to figure out how do we make sure that this action is, this data is actionable. That will lead to feedback that we get from not only our different community committee members, but the general public as well. which can lead to even more question gathering and more future projects. Anything to add, Bridget?
I think that to your point around this process will look differently. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how it's looking for some engagement.
Yes, I'll pause on that because we're getting into the summer engagement ecosystem towards the end of the presentation.
Okay.
So diving deeper into what our governance and our community governance model looks like, first we have built up and beefed up and will continue to beef up our staff as a manager at Baltimore's Promise. We of course have the wonderful Bridget Blount as our Deputy CEO here that oversees the strategy and direction of operating the Data Hub. As Director of Research, I oversee the committee structure of the Hub and the analysis of projects. As Bridget mentioned, we're so glad to have Alejandro Perez on board as the Director of Data Infrastructure and Integration. He will oversee the technical infrastructure of the Data Hub, including working with stakeholders, which we're doing a lot right now, and vendors on what the data submission and integration process will exactly look like. In the future, we're looking to hire an action research manager that will be hired this year that will support the committee structure and analysis of projects. And another goal of the Data Hub is to help improve the data integrity and quality within providing institutions. So to that point, we will contract with some data quality coaches that will work with Data Hub partner sites to improve internal data collection and management, as we know that the quality of the products that will come out of the Data Hub can only be good as the quality of the data that is sent to us to integrate. So one of the committees that I talked about is the Data Oversight Committee that has been rolling now. We meet monthly. We started at the end of last year, and it's really a great space for both data-heavy staff and program staff at these institutions to come together, learn more about not only what we do as institutions, but how we want to tackle some of our beginning use cases, including, as Bridget mentioned, the summer engagement ecosystem. So there's been a lot of great discussion on what kind of data we have to provide and what that might mean for the different questions that we might want to answer in the future. Great space with a lot of collaboration that we'll talk a little bit about how that has operationalized for the summer engagement ecosystem in just a moment. The other thing that's been happening so far is our building of the Community Research and Action Committee. And for more information on what we've been up to for the past couple months, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry.
Great. Thank you so much, James and Bridget. There's, every time I listen to the summary of all the things that have been accomplished, it's so exciting. And as a thought partner and leading a team, I actually have Marissa, Lisa, and Kima here from our team today. And if anybody else snuck in, just wave in the chat. We have a diverse group of people who are thinking about how do we train everyone in a way that there's like coherence. Lots of people have like DEI trainings and thinking about equity, but how do we have coherence around moving forward to guide an anti-racist data ecosystem? How do we do that? So one of the things, and it's in the legislation, is we have to engage community, and there are very many ways to do it. And we have to find members for the Community Research and Action Committee who are not simply advisors who vet things that people have done and say thumbs up, thumbs down. They're actually part of the governance structure. There will be community as in terms of that committee, and as we evolve in other ways, be actually helping to make decisions, guiding, or even being at the forefront of describing what it is that this data hub actually is doing when it comes to being an actual hub. So the first step towards really engaging community happened this past March, where we had worked to pull together some listening sessions where we rely on collaborative methodologies. You're probably very familiar with some of them that allow us to gather input from a variety of people and use that input sort of as a landscape study to get a sense of what the reality is around a certain question. And so we did that so that through these methods that are really accessible, they allow people to analyze their own data given time. They're equitable and liberatory inherently, and they're very rigorous, and they unify community. People are pretty darn happy when they do it. Out of that, we learned some very helpful things for the summer engagement. What we really came to focus on for the summer engagement program is that people are really interested in the essence of how we're engaging with young people, the mindset, whether or not we're being authentic or phony, whether or not we are really seeing young people for who they are. And we're also very interested in, and I'm saying we because I'm a part of community and we are all a part of community. We're also, the people who are speaking on behalf of me and my family and neighborhood also said that we really need to look at the quality, the outcomes, the types of outcomes we think are important, the kinds of things we want to be measuring, whether or not people are getting assistance in their management of all the data so that they can be accountable, whether or not, programs are affordable. Are there things parents need to pay? Can young people get to them? So all of these kinds of ideas came out in terms of these that particular question on summer engagement. And as well, there was some prioritizing being done so we can really give that over to the dot to model, not just saying, oh, this is what community likes, but saying, we have a sense of that analysis and we can contribute our own wisdom to that analysis. So we held these 3 sessions. We had about 90 verified participants in another day. We'll talk about the fun of having a lot of bots online, but we made through it. The reason we have approximately 25 in terms of our under 30 is just these we just finished, and so we need to go back into other data sets. So we're counting who was in the room, and then we need to go into the data set to see if some of our virtual people, if we had more younger people than we actually counted. But we were really blessed to have the Baltimore City Youth Poetry Team come and amp us up with more beautiful poems, but also provide insights. And we proposed 4 critical questions: the summer engagement, as well as one of the other use cases on post-secondary success, and then 2 related to engagement of community in the process. One looking at data sovereignty and how we as community control data, and the other one looking at some qualities and attributes for the CRAT. And I just want to share that in terms of those attributes, we certainly were already able to look at the diversity of the kinds of people we want to give, centering those who are marginalized and racialized, those who have lived experience in the systems, and those who send scams to my phone, even though I turned the volume off. Sorry about that. And those who are excited about data, decisions, activism, transformative change in society. So that we have those, but we also know that there are people who really want to look forward. They want to look ahead. They want to be involved. They want to get their hands in data. They want to do projects. They want to learn about data systems. And so those are the kind of people community and our working group and others told us about. And those are the kind of things we'll want to hear from you. So I don't want to belabor it too much, but what we're really talking about, Bridget already mentioned, we're talking about co-design. We're not looking to articulate what different populations think for a research study. We're wanting to hear from all of us together, merge it together, and help shine a light on our path forward so we can do better for our city. And I think that's all I have to say. I hope that covers it, Bridget and James.
That was great. Thank you so much, Jerry. I want to just add a little bit here around a little bit more specificity here. We are in the process of creating a plan that will recruit up to 10 community members to sit on a community research and action committee. Those 10 community members can really come from, we have some in the legislation, it calls out specific groups, but it's really wide ranging. And we're interested in identifying kind of data advocates and data users who want to be part of an ecosystem to collaborate around the ways in which we're building the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. So we're about to launch the process at the end of April. Another spoiler alert, we're very interested in you all pushing this out to your community. If you are interested in joining the Community Research and Action Committee, thinking about, does that make sense for you all? And so the committee will be the third, as James talked about, the third group as part of the larger Baltimore City Youth Data Hub governance structure. So we're really, really excited. We plan to launch it at the end of April, have a month-long process where we're selecting the 10 committee members to be a part of this process. The 10 committee members will be paid for their time with us. We expect it to be about a 2-year period of time commitment. And we are looking forward to learning and growing together in collaboration with our community representatives, the data system partners, as well as our exec team members.
Thanks, Bridget. That's great. So we hope you all will be enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, so next I'm going to be talking about, we've referenced the summer engagement ecosystem a couple times now, so I wanted to introduce that, but I wanted to introduce it in a way that also provided a more clear explanation of the value add of the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub and why the Data Hub is necessary for this kind of work. And I think it starts with the idea of summer systems table work that already exists in Baltimore City. Summer has been a priority for the city for a while now, and for the past couple of years, Baltimore's Promise and the Mayor's Office of Children's and Family Success have co-hosted a summer systems table convening that meets bi-weekly every single year during the summer. That includes folks that either directly provide summer programming for young people in the city or that supports summer programming in different ways in the city. And it's a great place where collaborations and coordinated strategies and data sharing happens. Some really good conversations and some actionable work that happens. Our collective work in the summer systems table was shouted out in the Baltimore Banner last year, talking about summer as well. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see the kind of data that that we were able to share amongst institutions. With the data that we were able to share, we were able to identify just under 38,000 summer opportunities for young people with 882 program sites and 611 event sites. Of course, this is from last year, and right now we're working towards getting this data for this year. And if you go to the next slide, we were also able to create a publicly available interactive dashboard where all the program sites are located and folks could use the filters to find out more information about specific programs that they want available to them. This was geared to more public policy stakeholders. This year, there'll be another interactive dashboard that's more focused towards the public. So all to say is that this table, it's a great table. A lot of people on this call sit on it and would likely agree with me that a lot of great things happen there. But there's a very key limitation in the data infrastructure that's available in this. There is actionable data that we're able to tell that there might be gaps in where programs are located and what kind of youth programs serve, but all the data that was served was at the program level. We know where the programs are located, but we do not know where the young people that actually participate in those programs are located. What are the demographics of those young people that participate? What are the academic backgrounds, past and future, of those young people that participate in summer programs? That level of detail and that individual level data wasn't really possible until the legislation was passed for the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. And it's why, since summer is something that's been an ongoing conversation and folks have been bought in, it's really been a low-hanging fruit for the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub to come in and leverage for our very first use case that we're working on right now, which is the summer engagement ecosystem. And if we go into the next slide, there are real two big, huge questions that we're trying to answer with this summer engagement ecosystem. One being just kind of a landscape, which children are and are not being served by summer programs and services. And two, what characteristics of programs are associated with positive outcomes and for which children. So with our work that's been happening in the Data Oversight Committee for the past couple of months and our community listening sessions that Jerry talked about, we've dived in deeper about what we want from research questions. We've dived in deeper about the quality of the data that we have and what we can and cannot answer at this point in the game, because we know that looking at summer is going to be an iterative process, right? This isn't just going to be a one and done project. It's going to be something that we come back to every single year with updated data from every single summer, that will only get better and better. So for example, for this first time around, a lot of the conversations that we've had is that a lot of the questions and sub-questions from this first bullet point of the landscape is likely what we're going to be able to tackle this year, whereas the higher level quality questions are something that we're really interested in and will make some progress in this time around, but it's something that we'll tackle again and again as our data quality processes improve. Getting to Bridget's point earlier about what we're looking forward to in terms of dissemination for this summer engagement ecosystem, some of the things that we've talked about as our different groups are accessible dashboards and accessible reports, and also ensuring that any reports that we put out has the necessary context involved, right, and necessary interpretation of what the data actually means and how it can be actionable. And to that point, a lot of what both community members and our data oversight committee have kind of tried to prioritize is, though the data hub is and the legislation focused specifically on the sharing of quantitative individual level data, that there's going to be a need also to build in some qualitative work as well that can go in and help us interpret and understand the quantitative findings that come out of the analysis. So there's been a lot of discussions on how to make sure that we present our research in a way that is actionable in many different ways. The last thing that I'll mention is that this use case, the summer engagement ecosystem, is just one of the many products that we hope to develop with the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. Other kind of products that we have talked about in our committee structures for the future include post-secondary preparedness and impact and kindergarten readiness. But we also know that within our data oversight committee, within our executive committee, and especially within our community research and action committee, once that's developed, that different questions may come up that can be answered with our tools in the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub space. And I believe with that, I'm turning it to Bridget.
Okay, we've been talking a lot at you all, so I'm gonna fly through these next couple of slides. Really quickly, I wanted to just say the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub, no matter like whether or not you stay connected or not, is going to build system infrastructure for all of us. We are going to be able, we're already working on shared definitions within the Summer Funding Collaborative. What does it mean around attendance, enrollment? It's going to be cleaner, more accurate and reliable information for us collectively. We're working towards shared performance measures. What does it look like for us to build in summer? What does it look like for us to build in summer? What does it mean around ADA, or how are we all collectively, whatever our entity is, understanding how well we're doing? We're creating coordinated data collection. We're already talking about youth surveys and around how we can create across the entities one youth survey, and or create questions that every survey includes. So this process of coordination impacts our system at large. And then we're working to create public access to actionable information and dashboards. Our work is so that our collective system is better off. When we all have cleaner, more accurate, and more reliable data, we can do our jobs better to make sure that those who make decisions have the information in hand to make sure that young people circumstances are improved. Ooh, what's this? Don't do that. We are building capacity within our community. And this is capacity that will help, again, at system. We're building a pipeline of individuals with lived experiences who can lead data projects. There are not enough young people, there are not enough people that are Black, brown, or that come from communities with lived experience who are able to participate in this work. It excludes people and naturally bias their interpretations and reporting that comes out. We can't do this work without thinking about inclusion and creating a workforce pipeline. We plan to provide training and tools, have these types of conversations. We're going to offer a community participatory action research training in the late summer, early fall. Like, these are the types of activities we want to do as part of this hub, to not just produce the information, but to make sure that people are able to actually use the information that we're producing, and that is actually making a system-wide impact that we hope to achieve. I want to call out one specific, a couple funders here. One, I want to thank the funders that are on the call, the local funders. Thank you so much to the Annie Casey Foundation, Weinberg, Able. Thank y'all so much for the support to sustain this work over the past 7 years that we've been doing it, thinking about planning and the legislative effort. And then we want to talk about the national funder that we were recently awarded. So oh, thanks for changing that, because that was funny. We did receive $1.2 million from the via this initiative called Modernized Anti-Racist Data Ecosystems for Health and Justice. And so this is an initiative that is supported from funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and facilitated by the Dave Beaumont Foundation. And we're super, super excited to be a part of this cohort. We are one of 4 communities. The other 3 communities are Tucson, Portland, and Pittsburgh. So we are one of the 4 communities. And I want to tell y'all, I guess that's my next slide. No, wait a minute. And so in this work, it really focuses on how do we create an ecosystem that focuses on anti-racism and equity. What I wanted to say in my last slide and in closing is the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub is at the precipice of leading or being a leading model both nationally and helping to position us to act smarter here in Baltimore. In any space that we stand, we are further along in thinking about our equity work than most people who have just developed an integrated data system only. And in spaces where people are very far in thinking about the integrated, their equity work, they're not as far along as us in thinking about the technological infrastructure that's needed in order to propel this type of work. Baltimore literally has the ability to come together collectively and demonstrate across the country of how we can really work together to establish a hub that will support our community. So as I will leave here with our principal investigator for the MAID grant, is that we are poised to be an innovative community-centered data ecosystem. We're looking to be an example for those cities across our country. I was in a convening this past week in Dallas. People want to know about the Data Hub. They want to know how we were able to do this. And what we're saying is that we need support locally so that we're continuously working towards how this can be a benefit to all of our stakeholders. So I want to, now is really, that's what we have to share. We do have some brainstorming questions like afterwards, but we wanted to pause there and see what has come up for you all. Any questions that you all have? We're open space. This is like a conversation. And I know that was a lot. Also, if y'all need a break, please help yourself.
I'll preface my question saying I'm coming from a technology background, but I'm really interested in where you all are in planning for technology infrastructure. And I know that when you have lots of different nonprofits and public sector, that everybody is using different data systems. And so I'm curious if you're envisioning everybody having to use the same data system or using multiple data systems and using data lakes, data warehouses. Just really interested, like how far you are thinking through the technology infrastructure.
I actually turn this over to my colleague, Alejandra.
Yeah.
And introduce yourself. Go ahead. You can. I mean, I know we've introduced you twice now, but.
Yeah. No, I think we're definitely thinking about it in terms of a centralized data warehouse at the moment. We are in the midst of relationship building with some of those data providers so that there is more streamlined data. So meeting with them individually and trying to align ourselves on differing data models, so that we can better understand what integration will look like. So yeah, the plan is to not necessarily, I think there's a lot of modernization at the individual agency level. So our work would mostly right now be focused on what can we streamline to help the integration process so that we can bring it into a data warehouse where that linkage will happen, where the anonymization will happen, and things like that.
Thanks, Alejandro. Do you have an idea of timeline of how long you think it would take for setting up the centralized data warehouse and integration?
Yeah, so for the summer engagement, our hope is to, and Bridget, feel free to chime in here, to have something like just some sort of preliminary assessment by the end of the year. So that can mean anywhere from like high level descriptive statistics. I think it's still up in the air about which research questions we will be able to answer. And I think there'll be a lot of back and forth between the integration vendor and some of these data providers, but our hope is to have some sort of preliminary, report that we can share with the community by the end of the year, even if that's just, out of all the agencies, this is how many records we were able to match. This is how many students overall were being serviced in previous years for the summertime. So more to come. I think it'll be a very iterative process, but our hope is to have something stood up by the end of the year for the summer engagement use case.
Thanks, Alejandro, and thanks, Karen. I would just offer that we're starting, like the way we're building the technical infrastructure is to first think about what are the needs for this initial use case. So we want to start small and then build up to kind of the larger technical infrastructure. So we're not going all in on one big data solution or technical solution at this moment. We're going to build out what we need, the user requirements for accessing the data information, the data from the partners for this first use case. So how we extract it and how do we link it for this use case. We're going to think about what we learned in that process to actually build out the larger data warehouse. Sorry about that. I think Caitlin, yes.
Yeah, sorry if I missed this earlier, but I had a question in regards to the frequency and when she would be collecting the data and how updated it would be. And then I guess the other part of that, it was in regards to the summer data that you had. I know you mentioned something about like demographics and like stats of how many finished in their education before and after and family like that. For the programmatic side, was that data collected via like survey, a pre-post test? Was it collected straight from the organizations providing the programming? Just I guess I'm with Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Baltimore. So we have like 5 sites with just the city of Baltimore alone. And we tend to do varying different types of data collection. And our frequency is not biannually, but it is quarterly depending on our program cycle. So just wondering how you plan to make sure that the data that we're looking at is the most accurate and how you're collecting it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Great questions, and I can take the first take on those. I think for the question on how often we'll be receiving data, it will likely depend on the specific projects. So for our summer ones, it will likely be just a one-time send of your past summer's data. Likely with this first time around, we're expecting some back and forth between the agencies to make sure that we get what we want. But for the other projects, depending on what the specific questions are and the timelines and the urgency and the priorities that our committees develop, it could be more often, right? And with each submission of data, we're building up what the warehouse will store. Your second question is so excellent and so timely because it really calls to one of the core conversations that we've been having as a data oversight committee regarding our different data collection methods and our different definitions for things. Because, for example, our summer funding collaborative, which Baltimore's Promise is the administrative backbone of, supports 70, 80 programs each summer, around 10,000 youth. There's a standardized and centralized data collection process and system there for what enrollment means, for what attendance means. There's daily attendance that's collected in that. But that, of course, differs. City Schools has a similar structure. Baltimore City Recreation and Parks, for example, depending on the camps or their kind of one-off events, they may have things like time in, but not necessarily time out. Things like our friends at the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, they have registrants of their pool party events, for example, on Eventbrite. But in terms of like attendance and stuff, it's a little different because their priority is to create a safe and welcoming and fun atmosphere for young people. So a big thing that we're talking about now is we each have our own institutional definitions for what things like attendance means, what things like success means, right? What things like enrollment means. And we are in the midst of now developing a shared data hub definitions for certain, for what attendance means and what enrollment means, so that we're on the same page in terms of the data hub analysis. But of course, the differing ways of how people define and collect data on attendance will help inform what is and is not possible, and will also help inform us on how we're going to encourage different institutions to collect data more efficiently or better in the future. We've already had some of those conversations with institutions, like this summer when you're doing that, make sure you include something like date of birth, or make sure you include enrollment in this way, because that will not only help you as an institution, but us as a collective Baltimore data hub answer the questions we want to answer. So I hope that covers it. And before I think I turn it over to Chris, I'll pause in case any of my colleagues want to answer. I think Chris came off mute. Maybe it was to say goodbye that he needed to leave for a meeting.
Yeah, maybe he was saying goodbye. I think the only thing I would say is that in addition to us creating that data hub definition based on what we understand, it also is creating transparency across the city. Because right now it's really uncovered. It's covered how people are determining what enrollment is when they're reporting out, like, we had 80% enrollment. Well, what does that actually mean, right? Like, are you actually counting people that stopped out of the program, but they were enrolled for a week of a 6-week program? So this is really going to allow us to be transparent in our data collection processes across the city.
Yeah, I was just saying, that was kind of like a follow-up question that I had, was for that clarity, because like you're saying, the way we defined an active member within our organization is probably not the same as everybody else here. So would that be given in the data saying that this organization identifies this child as an active because they attended 3 times a week for the month?
Yes.
Just so that there's that. Okay, cool. Then that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda.
So I guess more of kind of a philosophical structural question, kind of at the level of organization with this. And so I'm going to try to be clear, but please ask questions to me if I don't get to the question I want. So we know that there are data gaps, right? We know that there are gaps between data, like things that we want to know, and maybe things that are either collected or maybe they're not collected at all. So like, we know that a broader issue in the city is data gaps defined multiple ways. We also know that there are data quality issues. So, and it's so cool that you're bringing in data coaches and you can sort of work with the different contributors to the hub to sort of get through some of the quality issues that anyone who deals with city data in the city knows about. And the other kind of question I have is how are you, in relation to the hub, thinking about data structure? So one of the ways that it was mentioned in the presentation was data sovereignty. So who controls what of the data? And I think of that as a data structure question, but I think it's also can go across gaps and quality and control. But there's this other question of, data that we get from administrative sources represents administrative bias. It represents the structural priorities of a given organization. And this is something I struggle a lot within my organization is, we have to trust what we get. And my broader question is, given the committees, given the structure of what you're putting together there, have any of the community sessions sort of brought that up as sort of the actual structure of the data? Is that something that the group is interested in or thinking about ways that biases might reveal itself through the data itself? And I think an answer here that's totally acceptable is no, because you're trying to look at the system and maybe not at that level and you can just kind of discard it. But if you have thought about it, I would love to hear any considerations that are there.
I think the answer is yes. How far along we are is something that we're continuously working through, right? And I think we're very fortunate to be in different communities, national communities of learning to help us along. Our San Diego convening that we just went to with the Made for Health Justice, one of the, we were there for 3 days and half a day was a specific presentation on data sovereignty. So we were able to, and that was specifically from one of the communities is Tucson, and it's an indigenous community data center that's there. So they talked a lot about data sovereignty and data ownership. So there are a lot of things there that we've taken to heart and had some team conversations about on what this is going to look like. I think there's similar conversations that are happening that happened in the community learning session in terms of, this is kind of maybe tangentially related to, but it made me think of when you were talking about administrative data has its own biases. That's definitely something that has come up in our data oversight committee about how do we interpret what is coming into it, and how do we have shared definitions for things, but also what happens when data from different sources conflicts with each other, which is the one we trust more, if you will, to be most accurate based on, for example, if we have a field like race and ethnic identity, I'm going to trust the data source most that pulls that data that is sourced directly from the young person themselves, not from an institutional member looking at a child and making a guess on a form. You know what I mean? But I'm sure my colleagues have things to add there. But yeah, it's a great question and something that is definitely top of mind for us and for other communities.
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you, James. That did really come up, and a lot of people, even in our interest survey, which may turn up in your interest survey, people are like, that sounds great, but I think I want to hold back and see if this is for real, for real. Not just because of generic mistrust, but understanding how hard it is to shift a focus when there's so much bias inherent in the structural, the types of data, the indicator sets, the methods that are being used. All of those things sort of shift us away from where we're trying to get to. And so people are reasonably enthusiastic and cautious. So I think that really shows up. But there's a lot of focus on authentic community guidance and leadership. And then from a model of just even thinking about being at the cutting edge of something, we're throwing behind us terms like best practice. We're not pioneers because we don't want to reference settlers, but we are innovators. If it's not best practice, then what is it? It's next practice. Does it need to be perfect, which a lot of times things have to do, certainly to publish them, certainly to get funding for them. But these can't be perfect because we don't know what we'll get to until we implement them and see. So it's forcing us to push the cutting edge around funding, around policy and practice, around operations and structure, hierarchy, and how you bring hierarchies down without just blowing things up, So all of those things are inherent in what we're doing. Will we be able to do them all? The wise person says no, but James already said yes about what we want to do.
I think I would just add to this question, or as a response, is the integration for community members and the data oversight committee, a focus on why can't we answer the questions that we want to answer. And so when we have that focus on why can't we have the answer the questions that we want to answer, it gets to data structure. What is being collected? Like, how are we making interpretation? And what we've decided is that we want to hold this space of discomfort. And doing that means to have these conversations, to make decisions, noting that there are data quality issues, and then making a determination that we're moving forward with this, but in our next cycle, this is how we want to adjust, or these are the considerations we want to make. And so it's like holding the both and knowing that our data quality is not great. Why can't we answer these questions? Why can't we determine whether or not we have positive outcomes? What does that mean? Like, so, and then making sure that we are just getting better each time we iterate on our efforts.
And then, yeah, I'll just add a little bit more about like how this is top of mind to us and Bridget has been working on the Data Hub longer since I've been a part of the organization. But part of that learning, right, we've learned that the need for the Data Hub, the reason why data is siloed between institutions, right, wasn't on accident. I think we learned that part of that was based off of, and it's not just like, bureaucratic siloing. A big part of it was protection, because as many people on this call will know, there's been a long systemic history of data institutions using individual data to harm communities, and especially Black and Brown communities in Baltimore. And it's something that we want to keep top of mind. As Kima mentioned in her pieces at the top, it's also why our first guiding principle is high quality data analysis requires an understanding of historical context and competence. It's why transparency and community trust building are priorities, because we know that there's a lot of power, a lot of responsibility that we have with this initiative, and we want to make sure that we do right by ourselves and our city of Baltimore.
Yeah, and even our timelines, they don't allow for the kind of reflection and interaction. So it's just like it's fraught with there's sandpaper, and then we get to the smoother kind, we smooth it out, and we keep on going. Amanda, your question is the kind of questions that we need.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Great. Pause. All right. So we had some brainstorming questions. Oh no, we got like 10 minutes. But maybe in I'll edit the follow-up survey. We wanted to know like what tools and resources would be beneficial for your organization and other community-based organizations to have in order to be part of this process. So right now, the legislation has limited to these 3 entities. However, it is our goal to go back in front of the state legislation or legislatures in order to expand the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub. So we would love if you all just wanted to share, like, what are y'all thinking about as far as what are ways you would like to be involved? What tools and resources will be beneficial to our collective community? And what are the specific capacities and skills do you think that we need to build as a city to really develop, fully support the work of the Data Hub? There is a Jam board. Please feel free if you like to use it, but if not, yeah, I would love some initial thoughts.
Also in the chat, if that's comfortable for you.
Oh, yeah, that too. Thanks, Elizabeth. Maybe like 1 minute. Quiet. It's a lot of information.
But folks have jumped over there, so it's really just to
great.
jump over to the jam board. Anything you can drop in would be helpful.
Okay. As you all are doing that, I just want to say a few ways that you all can get involved. Please, not if you are interested, you can nominate yourself or another community member for the Community Advisory Committee. The announcement and recruitment will start the last week in April. We will be sure to make sure that you all are included on communications about that process. There is if you are interested, on our website, you can sign up to stay informed about Data Hub development. We are continuing to build out the Data Hub website. So there will be an actual website where you'll be able to get data dictionaries, access to the data information, and just follow just regular developments. We plan to convene this group, or just not like this specific group, anyone who is interested at some point. We don't know exactly, it's not going to be like a monthly type of thing, but hopefully this time next year, it is our goal that we're going to come to you with data. We'll be able to actually have questions, like answer questions around, this is what we found. These are some of the data challenges we're wrestling with. What are y'all learning? How can we address this? So we want to keep these types of conversations going. And then ultimately, we just want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us in this call. Thank you all so much for your thought partnership in this process. We can't do this work effectively without the support of everyone on this call. And so the more we can learn how we can collaborate in our different data efforts, or extend and expand our thinking around the work of the Data Hub, we appreciate that. And hopefully we can show up as partners to you all in your efforts as well. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and we hope you all have a wonderful weekend. It looks like the sun is trying to come out despite an earthquake. I got to figure this out. And we hope that you all have just a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.